are gonna get better now. But you're still a drunken slob.
Oh yeah. It just got better immediately. It's your favorite show, Headbangers and Hooligans, and as always, thank you for listening. Yours truly, Scumalicious. Got a good one for you. It begins the history of the Scummy Hooligan. In fact, I wrote this on my Facebook page, Metal Evolution, that Sam Dunn did a few years back, where he went through the entire history of heavy metal, where it started and where it ended up, and all the different genres and subgenres. And if you haven't seen any of those and you're a big fan of heavy metal like I am, you should go watch them, all of them. They're on his channel, Banger, and I mean, gotta give it up to him. They're so well done. You know, he interviews everybody from Dio to the glam bands, Bruce Dickinson, Gwar, Alice Cooper. He covers the whole spectrum, and it's definitely worth your time. So, with that, and trust me, the history of the Scummy Hooligan is not going to be on that level. Sorry. But I wanted to kind of use that format of what got me into punk and all the bands that I listened to that eventually led me to learning how to play the guitar and start a band, Bad Field Trip, that I talk about all the time. So I thought it would be kind of fun to, tell that story. It's kind of, basically, that's what it is. Story time with Scumalicious. Because everybody loves a good story. Well, usually. Alright. The very first punk song I ever heard was Anarchy in the UK. But it wasn't the Sex Pistols. It was Megadeth. And I actually still like that version. Nothing will ever beat the original. But once I found out that that was not their song, I did check out the original. And holy shit. Johnny Rotten. And I've said this before. I've talked about it ad nauseum. What makes him important as far as the history of music and how he influenced, punk music? That voice. There is nobody that has ever sounded like that and never will, And he wasn't a singer, but the Sex Pistols didn't want a singer. They wanted that guy. And as a fan, I just don't know how you could not listen to him and at least be like, wow, that's never heard anything like that before. And just that album, Nevermind the Bollocks, when you listen to it now, it still stacks up today, okay? And I know it's not complicated music, and it's right in your face, but you can still listen to that today, and it stacks up against any of the shit that we got, that we're subjected to on the radio or on YouTube or wherever. It's one album, and that's all that we would ever get from them. I know they have all these other, B-side recordings and demo tapes and all that, but that one album, it's fucking incredible. So around that time, I'm like 16. Okay, I'm still into metal. All right, it's like, wow, Sex Pistols, cool, Johnny Rod. You know, I got Iron Maiden and Faster Pussycat, and I love these bands. You know, I still get my Dungeons and Dragons, and I still get my beer and women. You know, so exciting to hear a band talk about getting laid, because at that time I wasn't. So, you know, as much as I like the Sex Pistols, still a metal guy. Alright. So, I've already told the story of I went to school in Atlanta. Well, in Atlanta, I met a guy down there. His name was Kyle Boyer, a.k.a. Chubbs. And, you know, it's kind of like the street nickname. You know, when you watch the first 48 on A&E, you know, they arrest a guy and he's like, we're looking for a Jerome Jones. Street name, Pookie. You know, they always have these fucked up, stupid street names. But his nickname, Chubbs, it fit, okay? Wasn't a skinny guy. He brought me a cassette one day. And he said, you have to listen to this band. Before he came to school at the Art Institute of Atlanta, he worked with the crews and set up stages and lighting, worked with a shitload of bands. And he said, I know these guys, they're really cool, you gotta check this out. That cassette was Monkey Pup. And that technically was the first punk band that I really got into. And I know they aren't like just straight up punk rock, they're more East Coast hardcore. But A Boy in a Man's World, that was the album. Fell in love with that cassette. And obviously, I think everybody knows how much I love Monkey Pup. In fact, all of their albums that I have, they're all on cassette. I do have a CD of Now, but I also have the cassette of it, you know. That's another reason why they're so special to me, because I could go to my cassette case, and there they are, Monkey Pup, right in front of me. And speaking of Monkey Pup, and that East Coast hardcore thing, the lineup for that album, Boy in a Man's World, Chris Milnes was the singer, Danny Nastasi on guitar. You know how much I love Danny Nastasi. If you ever listened to me, he'd probably be a little scared. Like, have you heard of this guy, Scummy? Yeah. I think he has a crush on me. He's a fucking weirdo. But anyway, Dave Neobor on bass and John Milnes, Chris Milnes' brother, on drums. And You Stink, first song I ever heard from him. And I'm like, when I heard that, very simple song, but I loved the heavy guitars. And you know, way-oh, 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 you make me sick. You really stink, girl. Way-oh, 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 you make me sick. But I love you. It's just, the whole album's that way. Batman, Landscrapers, the title track. Yeah, instant fan. Okay, so we're talking around 1990. Also at that time, when, you know, the glam bands were still around, but slowly dying. You know, you had Faith No More, was getting popular, and Soundgarden, and Voivod, and all these, you know, alternative bands and progressive metal bands, all that stuff. But I was still loved my Iron Maiden and Faster Pussycat, so I hadn't totally just dived into the whole punk thing. And also at that same time, and I'm going to get this out of the way real quick, he also had an album. Yes, I'm talking about an album that you put on the turntable, so we're really digging into the closet on that one. G.G. Allen. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because I'm just going to get this out of the way. If you don't know him, actually you're better off if you've never heard any of his music, okay? I got into a bit of an argument with a couple guys because I was talking about this history of the Scummy Hooligan. And they proceeded to tell me, don't leave out G.G. Allen. Well, G.G. Allen, who was born Jesus Christ Allen, not kidding, and I believe it was in, New Hampshire. He used to shit on stage, he used to masturbate on stage, and he would throw shit at the people in the audience that paid money. And by the way, if you paid money to see G.G. Allen live, that's your fault, you know. I remember I was talking about the Germs, and I've said the same thing. Like, who would pay money to watch Darby crash, who was so fucked up half the time he couldn't finish his words, he didn't know what he was saying, and maybe he yelled at a couple of fans, but for the most part he did stupid shit to himself, like cut himself and fall on broken bottles of beer and shit. But G.G. Allen would fight with the fans and talk about how he was going to kill himself, and just such a negative person. And I heard, for the first time when I heard it, I was like, wow. And I thought to myself, why is this guy so pissed off? Why is he so angry, right? The album that I heard, Real Punk Rock, that's not the name of the album, but I remember in the liner, that's what it said. Real Punk Rock. The name of the album was You Give Love a Bad Name. It came out in 1988. And he played this, and I'm looking over at Chubbs. I'm like, what is this? And here's the song title. Here's 5 song titles. And this will explain everything. Bloody Mary's Bloody Cunt. I Am a Rapist. Teenage Twats. Yeah, these are actual song titles. Scars on My Body. Scabs on My Dick. And of course, the ever lovely Expose Yourself to Kids. When he started playing that song, I said, shut it off. I don't want to hear this shit anymore. And, for the longest time, I just forgot about it. And I will get into this later. The mid-90s punk that really took over. But I did get an album of his, and it was called Freaks, Faggots, Drunks, and Junkies. And I'm being honest. I'm embarrassed to say that I actually own that CD. It's so negative, and the way he recorded it, it was a really raw recording, and he always sounded like he was swallowing the fucking microphone when he was yelling. But he had no impact on punk music. The only impact he had is that people were like, you know what? No matter how bad it gets, I'm not ending up like that asshole. So for me, and especially in my story here, history of the Scummy Hooligan, 0. He had 0 impact on me for anything. So that's over. Don't have to talk about him anymore. Alright. So Monkey Pup. Last year when I was on SoundCloud, I did a show about bands that belong together. Like, when you think of one band, what would be another band that would be a perfect band to tour with, I had like Pulley and Strung Out. I can't remember. I had a shitload of different bands, but one of those was Mucky Pup and Murphy's Law. And so this guy, Chubbs, introduced me to 3 artists. G.G. Allen, Monkey Pup, yay, and Murphy's Law. And trust me, Murphy's Law and Monkey Pup, they're connected big time. Early lineup: Jimmy Gestapo, singer; Chuck Valley on bass; Todd Youth guitar; Doug Beans on drums. Back with the bong: Attack of the Killer Bears. To me, that song there, Attack of the Killer Bears, still one of the greatest songs ever written, okay? And the thing with Murphy's Law, a lot of their music is fun. It's the exact opposite of G.G. Allen. And so is Monkey Pup, alright? It's heavy, and it's fast, and it's to the point, okay? You know, it's East Coast hardcore punk, basically. That's what I call it, you know? And I know I bitch about all the 100 words that people use to describe bands, but that's really what they are. East Coast hardcore punk bands. And these bands are slowly sucking me in, you know? And I notice a lot of the bands that I used to like, I don't listen to them as much anymore. You know, I remember LA Guns, and I had their first 3 cassettes. Little fuel for the fire here. Anyway, I had their first 3 cassettes, and I remember I hadn't listened to them in a while, so I put them in. And we're talking like around 1991, 92. I didn't want to listen to them anymore. It's like, I don't really like this shit. So what do I grab? I grab Murphy's Law. Back with the Bomb, that album. You know, I love listening to Jimmy Gestapo singing about, you know, smoking out of a bong and wearing combat boots and killer beers. It was easy to relate to that kind of music. And it was, like I said, it was starting to take over. I'm like, I don't know, what am I becoming? Because I never thought of myself as a punk rocker, you know. You kind of get the image in your head, right? Big mohawk and spiked wristbands and, you know, all the goofy shit that they used to wear. And I at this time, I didn't have a tattoo, not one. And we know how the whole tattoo thing is just out of fucking control, honestly. But anyway, so I liked punk rock a lot, but it was just a few bands. I still liked all my, you know, all the other bands that I was listening to, but also, like I said, some of them bands, I kind of felt like I was outgrowing them, maybe. Kind of made me feel bad. So when you get these albums, Murphy's Law, Monkey Pup, right? They list all the bands that they tour with. You know, you can see it in there. Special thanks and shout outs, and they list all the people and the bands. Well, one of those bands that Monkey Pup and Murphy's Law both talked about being a huge influence on them was Agnostic Front. And I had seen one video of theirs on Headbangers Ball. I know, that Headbangers Ball, crazy shit, right? Victim in Pain. I thought, well, I gotta get that, okay? And first cassette, Agnostic Front, Victim in Pain, obviously out of New York City. Roger Murray on vocals, Vinny Stigma, the guitarist, Rob Kabula, bass, and the drums, Dave Jones. Rat Cage Records. How about that for a fucking record label? You know? Oh, you got signed? Fuck yeah. Rat Cage Records, bitch. You haven't heard of that record label? New York City? Pansies? So, you know, here I am. I'm thinking, you know what? I think my music interest is changing, you know? I could feel it. I wasn't listening to Iron Maiden as much anymore. And after listening to Back with the Bomb from Murphy's Law, I had to get their debut, which self-titled, and completely different lineup. It was Jimmy Gestapo, still singing, but Alex Morris on guitar, Petey Hines on drums, and Pete Martinez on bass. But it's still a great debut album. Sit at Home and Rot, Fun, Day in the Life, Care Bear, and by the way, if you didn't know this, Jimmy Gestapo is in Grand Theft Auto 4. You know, the hardcore music station on there? That's him. Yes. You better bet your ass I was excited when I heard him talking when I was playing that game with my son. Anyway, that debut album for Murphy's Law, still all the same stuff. Drinking beer and partying and, you know, pissing off the neighbors. Oh, barbecue. Yeah. Barbecue in the backyard. So simple, fun shit. And when you're 21, 22 years old, you kind of relate to all that stuff. And it was a slow, sucking thing. I don't know why I'm describing it like that, but because it makes it sound like it's some evil thing. It's like I was alone listening to this music, and it was sucking me in. It was sucking. Okay, I'm starting to go down a different road right there. Let's stick to the subject, Scummy. But along with this East Coast thing, obviously, I'm like, okay, there's got to be other bands that play, a different form of it, because I read about it out in California. What was the difference? Well, in the beginning, and it pretty much is still the same, I think, today, a little bit more melody in the music. Not that Monkey Pup and Agnostic Front, Murphy's Law don't have a little bit of melody, but theirs is more just, balls out. We're playing this shit, and if you don't fucking like it, eat a bag of shit. But in California, there was the songs were a little more catchy. Is that what I want to use? That's the way it kind of felt to me. And the first band that I listened to that people were talking about and saying, man, you've got to hear this punk band. And they listed all these different stupid fucking words that I talk about. I'm not going to use them. Jawbreaker. Okay? And I'm going to try to pronounce her names and not destroy them, hopefully. Voice guitar, Blake Schwarzenbach. Chris Bauermeister on bass. Adam Fahler on drums. And the first song I ever heard was Want, which Lagwagon would cover later and do a really good job on it, by the way. But anyway, I heard that and I was like, wow, this is... And I remember talking to a guy I was working with at the time that had been listening to him, and he's like, yeah, there's a lot of bands like out in California like that. You ever heard of Crimpshine? No, I haven't. And he had a cassette of Crimpshine. Why is that a big deal? Well, I tell you, I'm going to list some people that were in Crimpshine. Aaron, I love this name, Aaron Comet Bus on drums. Jeff Ott, who played guitar and sang. Jeff Ott, by the way, would go on to start 15, and we'll get into that later. Pete Ripens on bass, Paul Curran on bass, Tim Armstrong, yes, the same Tim Armstrong that would be in Operation Ivy and then Rancid, and Jesse Michaels was in Crimpshine too, who sang in Operation Ivy. And the recordings were rough, pretty raw, but you could tell, you're like, wait, he's right. it is punk, only it's a different kind of punk. They're not so pissed off like the East Coast guys are. And not that Mucky Pup and Murphy's Law necessarily are pissed off, but it was kind of a different attitude, you know? East Coast more in your face, California a little laid back. And that's when I got really excited, because the Crimp Shine made me think, wow, I gotta hear some more shit like this, you know? Yeah, I was a little bit bigger of a fan of the laid back punk rock, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And that's when I started to discover the really, really important bands. The ones that I talk about every day on here, and I have been for the last year. So, that's where we're going to stop. And tomorrow, part 2, the history of the Scummy Hooligans continues. I think you're going to like this journey. And you can like that journey too, the band. I'm just telling you, the journey I'm talking about is really fucking cool, because it's me. Man, I gotta quit loving myself so much. Alright, you know how I do this. Take it easy, and if it's easy, take it twice. I'm out.